I discovered my girlfriend's messages to her ex. In one of them, she mentioned that she was just waiting for his inheritance before she could fully commit to me. I chose to remain silent. In a moment of defiance, I fabricated a bankruptcy notice and left it on my desk, anticipating her reaction. The very next day, she ended our relationship. Her frantic calls began as soon as I shared a photo of my new house on Instagram. At 34 years old, I had always envisioned that the moment of revelation would be dramatic, accompanied by screams, broken dishes, or slammed doors. Instead, it unfolded in a profound silence. It was a Tuesday, and I was working from home, syncing my files when Evelyn's messages appeared on the shared tablet we used. She had neglected to log out, and I saw her exchanging messages with Brian, her ex, whom she had previously claimed was a toxic part of her past. My breath caught in my throat as I read the recent exchanges, and my heart sank like a heavy stone. It felt as if I had accidentally stumbled upon a dark secret, painfully obvious to everyone except the one living it. Brian was still preoccupied with discussing his inheritance, expressing a desire to buy a house and build a future together. It was sickening to read. "Don't lose your nerve, babe. Can't wait much longer." "I won't. I'm just waiting for his inheritance. But I'm yours. Promise." I closed the tablet, and the atmosphere in our apartment, one that I had financed, suddenly felt suffocating and alien. I surveyed the life we had supposedly been constructing together, the framed photographs of our smiling vacations, the outrageously expensive coffee machine she insisted we buy. It all felt like a mere facade, a stage for her performance. Instead of anger, I was struck by a chilling clarity. I realized I wasn't dealing with a partner grappling with uncertainty. I was facing a strategist, someone calculating and predatory. Hysteria seemed like a waste of energy. She had a plan, and I needed one of my own. For the next 3 days, I acted as the perfect boyfriend, pairing her meals and asking about her day, all the while observing her. I noted how her eyes glazed over when I spoke of our future, and the way a hidden smile brightened her face whenever her phone pinged with a new text. It was as if I were watching behind-the-scenes footage of a performance. The depth of her betrayal was almost captivating. The inheritance she was waiting for was real. My grandmother had passed away 6 months prior, leaving me a sum substantial enough to escape the cycle of renting and purchase a modest home. I had been eager to share this news with Evelyn, hoping to build a future together. When I revealed it to her, she clapped her hands with an enthusiasm I had mistakenly interpreted as genuine joy. It turned out to be nothing more than greed. My plan was simple, yet deceptively effective. On Friday morning, I found a generic bankruptcy notice template online that appeared official. After spending 20 minutes filling in my name, inventing a case number, and adding the letterhead of a fictitious law firm, I left it partially hidden under a pile of mail on my desk, visible enough for her to find. That evening, I went for a long run, needing to clear my head and focus solely on the rhythm of my feet against the pavement and the air filling my lungs. When I returned, the apartment was eerily still. Evelyn was gone. On the kitchen counter, where we used to leave sweet notes for each other, lay a single folded piece of paper. "I'm so sorry. I just can't do this anymore. The financial instability is too much pressure for me. I need to be on my own and figure things out. Wish you the best." The abruptness of her departure was what truly cut deep. No arguments, no discussions. Just a calculated exit now that I was deemed worthless. I sat on the floor of our empty living room, not crying, but feeling the vast emptiness she left behind. It was the loneliest I had ever felt. For weeks, silence enveloped me as I began the painful process of untangling our lives and packing her belongings into boxes. I mourned the woman I had thought she was and the future I had envisioned for us, eventually. My grandmother's funds cleared, and the house I had been eyeing, a modest 2-bedroom with a porch and a small, overgrown yard, was still available. It no longer represented our shared dream. It had transformed into my sanctuary. As a cash buyer, I expedited the closing process. which still took nearly 3 weeks of navigating inspections, titles, and paperwork. Yet, in the realm of real estate, that felt like lightning speed. Last night I drove to my new home for the first time as its owner. The air was filled with the scent of freshly cut grass and the promise of new beginnings. I took a photo of myself, sitting on the top step of the porch holding a single key with the caption, "New Beginnings." I refrained from tagging anyone. I simply let it drift into the digital ether. Within 7 minutes, my phone lit up with a call from Evelyn. I ignored it. Soon, my screen flashed again, Evelyn. Then a text followed by another call, and then one from a number I didn't recognize. I'll let it go to voicemail. It was Brian. My phone buzzed continuously for the next hour. Inundated with panicked, confused, and increasingly irate messages. I chose not to respond. Instead, I settled onto my porch, took a sip of my beer, and watched the sun dip below the horizon, marking the beginning of my new life. The storm of chaos had arrived right on schedule. As time passed, the incessant calls and messages continued, transforming into a frantic background noise amid the bustle of moving. I saved the voicemails. They became, in their own twisted way, masterpieces of manipulation. Evelyn began her messages with an overly sweet tone, feigning confusion. "Hey, it's me. I saw your post about the new house. I don't understand. The bankruptcy notice, call me back. I'm really worried about you." Brian's messages were far less subtle, filled with raw anger. "You played her, man. That's messed up. You think you can just lie to people like that? You owe her. Call her back and make this right." The audacity of his comments was astounding. After 3 days of this relentless barrage while unpacking boxes in my new living room, I finally decided to answer. It was Evelyn on the line. "Oh my God, you're okay," she exclaimed, relief dripping from her voice in a way that felt almost comical. "I was so worried. I saw that bankruptcy letter and then you disappeared. And now you have a house. What is going on?" I kept my tone flat and calm. "You left, Evelyn," I stated matter-of-factly. "I left because I was scared. I thought you were ruined. How could you lie to me like that?" There it was, the classic pivot, the gaslighting. Suddenly I was cast as the villain for fabricating a financial collapse that exposed her true intentions as a gold digger. "The letter you left was pretty clear," I replied, slicing open a box with a knife. "You said you needed financial stability. I assume you concluded there was none to be had with me, so you left. End of story." A pause ensued, during which I could hear her breathing, her mind racing. "That's not fair," she eventually retorted, her tone shifting from wounded to indignant. "I invested 2 years of my life in you, in us. I helped you. We looked at houses online for months. I helped you plan. We looked at Zillow, Evelyn. That's not a contribution." "It is," she insisted, her voice escalating. "Was a supportive partner. That house, that money, I'm entitled to a share of it. That was supposed to be our future. You don't get to just take it all for yourself." The silence that followed was palpable. I allowed her words to linger in, the air wanting to commit them to memory. "Evelyn," I said, my voice dangerously low. I saw the texts to Brian. Complete silence followed, not a single breath for a full 10 seconds. Then came the explosion. A flood of excuses poured forth. It wasn't what it looked like. He was just an old friend. I was being insecure and pushing you away. I was just confused. I was keeping my options open because you were being distant. You were waiting for my inheritance. I stated plainly. It wasn't an accusation. It was a fact. Then you were his. Just like that, she hung up. An hour later, notifications began to erupt on my Instagram post. Brian had commented, "This guy is a liar and a manipulator. Don't believe anything you see." Another comment read, "Enjoy the house you stole from her." My friends started texting, confused, asking, "Is everything okay?" I didn't respond to them yet. Simply deleted Brian's comments and blocked him. Then came a text from Evelyn, the escalation I had anticipated. I nearly laughed when I read it. I'm talking to a lawyer. I'm going to sue you for my share and for the emotional distress you caused me by lying. You'll be hearing from my attorney." Reading that text, a genuine smile crossed my face for the first time. It was perfect. She was so blinded by her own greed that she couldn't see the pit she was digging for herself. I spent the rest of the evening setting up my new Wi-Fi and systematically removing her from every shared account: Netflix, Spotify Premium, Amazon, a digital exorcism. Each click of the mouse felt like a small, satisfying victory. The last thing I did before bed was contact my old landlord about the apartment. I needed to retrieve my security deposit. $2.850. An update arrived in the form of an official-looking envelope in my new mailbox. Evelyn had indeed followed through. She filed a small claim suit against me for $5,000. Standing in my sunlit kitchen, I read the filing, struck by her audacity. The claim outlined compensation for services rendered in financial and future planning, as well as emotional damages resulting from what she termed deceptive and manipulative practices. She was framing my quiet little test as a malicious scheme to emotionally torture her. But that wasn't the only issue at hand. My old landlord had returned my call, his voice heavy with regret. The $2,850 security deposit had already been disbursed to Evelyn. Since her name remained on the lease when it ended, she had gone to the management office the day after I moved out, claiming I had agreed to let her handle it and sign the paperwork. The landlord informed me it was now a civil matter between me and her. Of course, it was. My pain had solidified into a sense of purpose. This was no longer merely about a broken heart. It was about holding people accountable for their actions. My response was calculated. First, I would counter her small claim suit. I didn't need a lawyer. The truth would be my greatest weapon. I began to compile a file, starting with a printout of her breakup note. Then, I included printouts of the text exchanges between her and Brian, highlighting the key phrases. "I'm just waiting for his inheritance, and I need financial stability." The narrative was clear, and I was simply the editor. Second, regarding my security deposit, I drafted a formal demand letter that was polite, professional, and completely uncompromising. It cited the specific clause in our lease regarding the return of deposits, stating that she had 14 days to return the full $2,850 via certified check. Otherwise, I would file a separate small claims action against her for theft. I sent my demand letter via certified mail and followed up with an email for good measure. The real confrontation, however, came unexpectedly. As I was leaving my office building downtown, I heard someone shout my name. It was Brian, jogging toward me across the plaza, his face contorted in a mask of self-righteous anger. "We need to talk," he declared, invading my personal space. His larger frame was clearly intended to intimidate. "We have nothing to discuss," I replied, standing my ground. "You need to make this right with Evelyn. You humiliated her. You're a psycho." I remained calm. The only game being played. "Here's the one she's orchestrating to extract money from me." Brian scoffed. "She invested years in you. You owe her something." "The only thing anyone owes," I said, locking eyes with him, "is my $2,850 security deposit, which my ex took." A smirk crept across his face as he leaned in, lowering his voice to a mocking tone. "She told me you said she could have it for her troubles. Who do you think a landlord is going to believe?" His response revealed everything he wasn't. Just aware of their scheme, he was proud of it. They had clearly coordinated their narrative. "Thanks, Brian," I said, genuine gratitude slipping into my voice. "That's a very interesting perspective." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, baffled by my lack of anger. Once I reached my car, I pulled out my phone and documented our conversation in an email to myself, noting his words, the date, and the time. Brian had claimed that Evelyn told him I agreed to let her keep the deposit, a clear indication of their coordinated deception, another valuable piece for my file. The social fallout, however, was more complicated. Evelyn had been busy spinning her tale, painting me as the villain in this drama. She told everyone I had experienced a breakdown, faked a bankruptcy to control her, and then kicked her out. Some people believed her. As a result, my phone grew quieter, and though it stung, I couldn't deny the unique pain of being rewritten as the antagonist in my own story. Yet, I held on to the belief that the truth would eventually surface. Patience was key. On the day of the small claims hearing, I felt unusually calm. The room was sterile and unimpressive, filled with fluorescent lighting and worn-out chairs. Evelyn and Brian were already there, seated together and whispering. Evelyn was dressed in professional attire, projecting the image of a woman poised to be unjustly wronged, while Brian looked thuggish, arms crossed and glaring at me. They seemed to believe they were starring in some courtroom drama where the most emotional argument would prevail. Evelyn went first, delivering a tearful, impassioned speech about my deception and the psychological toll it had taken on her. She lamented the future I had allegedly stolen from her. And her performance was compelling. When it was my turn, I didn't deliver a speech. Instead, I presented my evidence methodically. Exhibit A, I stated, placing the printout of her breakup note on the judge's bench. It contained her own words, declaring she was leaving due to financial instability just a day after she supposedly believed I had gone bankrupt. Exhibit B. I continued, presenting the text messages between Evelyn and Brian from the week. Before I read one aloud into the quiet room, I'm just waiting for his inheritance. Then I'm yours. For the first time, I saw Evelyn's composure crack as the judge. A nonsense woman in her 60s lifted her gaze from the paper to look at her. Exhibit C, I added, showing a timeline that indicated Evelyn left my apartment on May 10th. While the inheritance in question didn't clear my bank account until early June weeks later, the judge didn't require much more information. She dismissed Evelyn's case with prejudice, her voice sharp. Miss Hayes, your claim is not only meritless, it is audacious. To seek compensation for a partnership you clearly intended to defraud is an abuse of this court's time. She then turned her attention to my countersuit regarding the security deposit. Evelyn repeated her falsehood, claiming I had told her she could keep it. The judge looked at Brian. Mr. Shaw, were you aware of this arrangement? Brian, attempting to appear helpful, nodded. Yeah, she told me he said she could have it. The judge leaned forward. So your testimony is that you were aware she was taking the full deposit based on a verbal agreement? Yeah, he replied. Puffing out his chest, I was allowed to testify about my conversation with him outside my office, presenting my time-stamped notes. I explained how he had tried to intimidate me and had smugly revealed their fabricated story. The stark contradiction between his aggressive demeanor with me and his helpful boyfriend act. In court was immediately evident to the judge. In the end, she ruled in my favor, ordering Evelyn to pay me the full $2,850 plus my court filing fees. Outside the courtroom, their hushed whispers erupted into a furious, hissing argument. The united front they had presented crumbled into accusations and blame. News of what transpired in that courtroom spread faster than Evelyn's lies ever had. Mutual friends who had distanced themselves sent awkward apologetic texts. Man, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I simply replied, no worries. I didn't have the energy for anything more. Their validation wasn't my goal. A week later, I heard through the grapevine that the public drama, combined with his aggressive attitude, had caused issues for Brian at his job in sales, where reputation is everything. Apparently, his company was unhappy with him making threats in the lobby of a client's building. My employer's security had officially barred him from the premises following the incident. The last communication I received was a single text from Evelyn days after the judgment check arrived in my mailbox. I hope you're happy in your stupid house all alone. You ruined my life. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel joy. I felt nothing. It was a message from a ghost. I deleted it, blocked her number, and stepped outside to my yard. Months have passed since then. The silence they left behind is no longer empty. It's filled with the sounds of morning birds and the gentle hum of my own life. I've planted a garden and reconnected with the friends who truly matter. The scar from the betrayal remains, and I suspect a small part of it always will. But it no longer aches. I didn't need them to face a grand cinematic downfall. I simply needed them to confront the natural, mundane consequences of their own choices. They weren't master villains. They were just greedy, entitled individuals, so convinced of their cleverness that they never recognized the simple and obvious trap they were setting for themselves. The best revenge, I've learned, isn't loud. It's the quiet satisfaction of building a better life from the ashes of a false one. It's about sitting on your own porch in a house you earned, knowing you've faced the worst with a calm heart and a clear head. They didn't ruin my life. They merely cleared the way for my real life to begin.